Daf Yomi, Tractate Menachot 97b, top of the page, but not exactly the top of the page, maybe a few lines into it, with Rabbi Meir Sofer. Okay? Ready, set, go. Rabbi Meir Sofer, Zehu B'yama Bas Chamisha, HaKol Amos Kelim B'yama Bat Shesh. Rabbi Yehuda Sofer Kazeh Yehu Kol Amos Kelim. Rabbi Yochanan explains that Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda disagree with regard to the inference from the phrase, and this shall be the higher part of the altar. Rabbi Meir maintains that one can infer that it is this, the golden altar, which is measured with a cubit of 5 handbreadths, but all the cubits of the other vessels in the temple are measured with a cubit of 6 handbreadths. And Rabbi Yehuda maintains that one can infer that like this small cubit shall be all the cubits of the other vessels in the temple. Kasol kadaitach miyesod yad sovev be'ama bat chamisha begova umay chek ha'ama ve'ama rochav achi ka'amar mechek ha'ama ad rochav ve'ama bat chamisha. The Gemara discusses the interpretation of the verse. It might enter your mind to say that the verse is referring to the height of the sections of the altar, meaning from the base of the altar until the surrounding ledge, the height is measured with a cubit of 5 handbreadths. And what is the meaning of the phrase, the bottom shall be a cubit, and the breadth a cubit? This is what the verse is saying. From the cubit at the bottom, meaning the base of the altar, until the cubit of that breadth of the surrounding ledge shall be measured with a cubit of 5 handbreadths. Gova mizbeach kama have 10 amot. She's bnei chamsha v'arba arba'e bnei shita. The Gemara explains the difficulty with this interpretation. According to this interpretation, how many cubits is the height of the altar? 10 cubits. 6 of these cubits from the ground up to the surrounding ledge are measured with a cubit of 5 handbreadths each, totaling 30 handbreadths, and the remaining 4 cubits from the ledge up to the top of the corners of the altar are measured with a cubit of 6 handbreadths each, totaling 24 handbreadths. Mizbeach kamahavi chamshin v'arbo. Palged mizbeach kamahavi 27. Mikranos v'yatzovev kamahavi 24. כמה בציר לפלגי למזבח תלעשו ותנן חוט של סיקרא חוגרו באמצע כדי להבדיל בין דמים העליונים לדמים התחתונים. Accordingly, how many handbreadths is the height of the altar? It is 54 handbreadths. That's Gematria Hashem in English Gematria, 54. How many handbreadths is the height of... It's also love. Hashem is love. 54. Makes sense? How many handbreadths is the height of half the altar? It is 27 handbreadths. How many handbreadths is the height from the top of the corners of the altar until the surrounding ledge? It is 24 handbreadths. 4 cubits of 6 handbreadths each. Therefore, how many handbreadths is the surrounding ledge short of half the height of the altar? It is 3 handbreadths above the halfway mark. And we learned in the Mishnah, Midot 3:1, a red line encircled the altar in the middle in order to separate between the blood that must be presented on the upper part of the altar and the blood that must be presented on the lower part of the altar. Eloha detanya gabi oila sa'ov have oila makevish. Upan na soive bala lekern de roi nis mis rachis moile kes roi shamimul opa. Mavdil amoitza es dama al kira mizbeach. But this interpretation is contradicted by that which is taught in a Braita with regard to the bird burnt offering. The blood of which must be presented on the upper part of the altar. The priest would ascend the ramp and turn to the surrounding ledge and arrive at the southeast corner. He would pinch off the bird's head across its nape and separate it from its body. He would then squeeze out its blood on the wall of the altar beside him. And if the priest performed the squeezing below his feet, meaning below the surrounding ledge, even 1 cubit beneath his ledge, it is valid. It's still valid, I guess. It's valid. The Gemara explains the difficulty. According to the previous calculation, the surrounding ledge was only 3 handbreadths above the halfway mark. Therefore, if one squeezes out the blood 1 cubit of 5 handbreadths below the ledge, isn't he putting the blood of an offering that must be presented on the upper part of the altar 2 handbreadths below the middle of the altar? Ella Cheka Kenisa Ama Rochav Kenisa Gevula and Sifasa Saviv Kenisa. Rather, the verse must be interpreted differently. It is not referring to the height of the altar, but to the width of each of its levels, as follows. The bottom shall be a cubit. The bottom shall be a cubit from the top of the external side of the base of the altar. The wall of the altar is inset by 1 cubit of 5 handbreadths, and the breadth a cubit. This is referring to the width of the surrounding ledge of the altar, as at this point the wall is again inset by 1 cubit of 5 handbreadths. Its border by its edge round about shall be the 1 span. This is referring to the width of the corners of the altar, which is also a cubit of 5 handbreadths, causing the area of the top of the altar to be inset by an additional cubit. Mizbeach kama have le shitin. Palge de mizbeach kama have telatin. Mikranot ve'ad sovev kama have esrim ve'arba'a. Kama batzir le palge de mizbeach shita. Utinan im asisa limata beraglav afilu ama achat keshera. The Gemara explains the halacha with regard to the bird burnt offering. According to this interpretation, how many handbreadths is the height of the altar? It is 60 handbreadths, 10 cubits of 6 handbreadths each. How many handbreadths is the height of half of the altar? It is 30 handbreadths. How many handbreadths is the height from the top of the corners of the altar until the surrounding ledge? It is 24 handbreadths, 4 cubits of 6 handbreadths each. Therefore, how many handbreadths is the surrounding ledge? Short of half the height of the altar, it is 6 handbreadths above the halfway mark. And we learned in the Braita, and if the priest performed the squeezing below his feet, even 1 cubit beneath the ledge, it is valid. According to this calculation, 1 cubit below the surrounding ledge is still part of the upper section of the altar. B'mai okimta b'knisa. Mimatis mokmat le b'knisa. V'hotenan mizbeach haya 32 al 32. Ale ama v'kanas ama zehu yesod. Nimsa shloshim al shloshim. The Gemara asks, to what part of the altar did you interpret the verse to be referring? It is referring to the width by which each section of the altar is inset, and you can interpret the verse as referring to the width by which each section is inset. But didn't we learn in a Mishnah, Midot 3:1, the measurements of the base of the altar were 32 cubits by 32 cubits. Once the altar rose to the height of 1 cubit, it was inset by 1 cubit on each side. This lower section was the base of the altar. One therefore finds that the second section of the altar measured 30 cubits by 30 cubits. Shloshim u'shnei tefachim havi. If the width of the base is measured with a cubit of 5 handbreadths, then the second section of the altar does not measure 30 cubits by 30 cubits. Since the rest of the altar is measured with a cubit of 6 handbreadths, the second section measures 30 cubits and 2 handbreadths. Vesu ala 5 v'kana ama zeu sovev nimtza 28 על 28 ו4 in brackets, or arba in parentheses, arba. Tvachim havi, if, and furthermore, the aforementioned Mishnah continues, once the altar rose to the height of 6 cubits, meaning 5 cubits above the base, it was inset by 1 cubit on each side, forming a ledge. This is the surrounding ledge. One therefore finds that the third section of the altar measured 28 cubits by 28 cubits. If the width of the base and the surrounding ledge 28 cubits by 28 cubits. Interesting. Wow. 28 cubits by 28 cubits. What is it? One therefore finds that the third section of the altar measured 28 cubits by 28 cubits. One therefore finds that the third section of the altar measured 28 cubits by 28 cubits. If the width of the base of the surrounding ledge are measured with a cubit of 5 handbreadths, the third section measures 28 cubits and 4 handbreadths. 28 cubits and 4 handbreadths. 28 cubits and 4 handbreadths. 28, 16, 4. Wow. This is the PL89. This is amazing. Okay. If the corners of the altar were also measured with a cubit of 5 handbreadths, then the top of the altar was a full cubit of 6 handbreadths wider, as the wall of the altar was inset 3 times on each side by a cubit of 5 handbreadths, rather than 6 handbreadths. The area on the top of the altar was therefore 27 cubits by 27 cubits. 27 cubits by 27 cubits. 27 cubits by 27 cubits, which the Mishnah should not have referred to as 26 cubits. The Gemara answers that the Tana was not precise, as he should indeed have stated that the altar measured 27 cubits by 27 cubits. That's where kolim are involved. It's one off. Makom hiluch raglei kohanim ama miza v'ama miza benimtza 24 al 24 makom hamalacha 25 5 havai. The Gemara rejects this explanation as the Mishnah continues. Within the corners of the altar there was an area where the priests set their feet as they circuited the altar. The area was 1 cubit on this side, along with the length of the altar, and 1 cubit on that side, along with the width of the altar. One therefore finds that an area of 24 cubits by 24 cubits remained as the area for the arrangement of wood on the altar. If the total area of the top of the altar was 27 cubits by 27 cubits, the remaining area would be 25 cubits by 25 cubits, not 24 by 24. וחיתם האחד נמי לא דק והכתיב והאריאל 12 אורך ו12 רוחב רבוע יכול שאני שאינו אלא 12 על 12 כשהוא אומר על 4 רבעיו מלמד שבאמצע הוא מודד 12 אמה לכל רוח ורוח. And if you would say that here too the time was not precise, that is difficult, but isn't it written, and the hearth shall be 12 cubits long by 12 wide, square on its 4 sides. Ezekiel 43:16. The hearth is the area for the arrangement of wood on the altar. One might have thought that the area for the arrangement of wood was only 12 cubits by 12 cubits. When the verse states on its 4 sides, this teaches that one measures from the middle of the altar 12 cubits in each and every direction, meaning the area of the arrangement of wood was 24 cubits by 24 cubits and not 25 by 25. The Gemara rejects an alternative explanation. And if you would say that when the Mishnah states that the base of the altar was 32 cubits by 32 cubits, with regard to 6 of those cubits, the Mishnah initially counted them as cubits of 5 handbreadths, this explanation is difficult. If so, the base of the altar measures 6 handbreadths less, totaling only 31 cubits of 6 handbreadths, in which case the vacant area in the temple courtyard would be 1 cubit wider than it actually was. Titznan kol hazara hoiso 180 שבע רוחב 135 ממזרח למערב 187 מקום דריסת רגל ישראל 11 אמה מקום דריסת רגל הכהנים 11 אמה מזבח 32 בין אולם ולמזבח 22 אמה ההיכל 100 אמה 11 אמה אחורי בית הכפורת. The Gemara elaborates. This is as we learned in the Mishnah, Midot 5:1. 5:1 is Gematria Gary. The dimensions of the entire temple courtyard were a length of 187 cubits by a width of 135 cubits. This is Gematria Masa and Kahal. The length of the courtyard from east to west was 187 cubits, divided as follows. The area of the Israelite courtyard where it was permitted for Israelites to set their feet was 11 cubits long, and the area where it was permitted only for the priests to set their feet was 11 cubits long. The altar was 32 cubits long, and the area designated as between the entrance hall and the altar was 22 cubits. Wow. 22 cubits. The area designated between the entrance hall and the altar was 22 cubits, and the sanctuary was 100 cubits long. There was an additional 11 cubits of space behind the ark, the hall of the ark cover, meaning behind the Holy of Holies, which was at the western end of the sanctuary. If the altar was actually only 31 cubits long, the Mishnah accounts for the length of only 186 cubits. Ela cheka ama begova ama rochav kedisa gevura al sifata saviv. Rather, the verse must be interpreted differently. The bottom shall be a cubit. This is referring to the height of the base. The breadth a cubit. This is referring to the width of the surrounding ledge. Where the wall of the altar is inset by 1 cubit, its border by its edge round about shall be the 1 span. Okay, stop here.